Hello and welcome to Slow Pit Stop, the international Formula One podcast by fans for fans all around the world. My name's Arafat, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Mohammed. Say hi, Mohammed.
Hi, Mohammed.
Did you have yourself on mute there or something? And we're also joined by our second favorite Canadian, Adam Avatar.
Joined by and increasingly joined with.
Joined with, yeah. Our first favorite Canadian is obviously Mohammed. The most Canadian person I know.
Yeah, very proudly so, I find.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you went to your local Grand Prix this weekend, didn't you?
I did go to my, oddly enough, local Grand Prix. It was in my
It's the
same
closest
time
one
zone.
to you.
It is the
It was
closest,
the closest one
me.
to you, and you were able to get there by car, which was a safe and normal decision.
Yes.
Yeah, that's honestly, we consider Buffalans, some of us.
Together?
We're all Bills fans.
Yeah, it's the way, like, in Scotland, Edinburgh is basically England, Buffalo is basically Canada.
There is a lot of overlap, surprisingly.
Yeah.
Or maybe not surprisingly, I don't know.
But tell us about your car journey.
Yeah, I decided to take a trip. I don't know why I decided against Canada in the past and why I went to Texas, but sometime along the way I was like, hey, you know what? This is like a lot closer to me than taking like a flight with a bunch of connections and having to.
No, it makes sense because like Canada is your home. And when you go on vacation, you like to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So going to the USA race would have been interesting for you.
Yeah, exactly. I actually, but ironically, more than Texas, I felt like more of a culture shock in Quebec. It is as Frenchified as everyone makes it out to be, and perhaps even more so. And I know I've talked about it before with Adam and talked about, hey, why is everything in French? But literally everything is in French. People, like, I had to tell them, like, sorry, I only speak English. And I didn't think I'd have to ever do that in Canada. And it's like funny because when you're driving, you cross over from Ontario, one province, into Quebec, the other province. And it's just like as soon as you cross, everything is in French. And it's I don't know, Adam, did you find like a culture shock going into Montreal for the first time or no?
Wow. I don't think so, but not particularly. But obviously we learn French in school, so I think we kind of find it delightful, maybe a chance to practice. It isn't always welcoming, for sure. There's definitely some people who will judge even your bad French, so you don't always feel terribly welcome there. I do think it's gotten stricter. I think as the French Canadians have been backed into a corner more and are more and more the minority, their language police have gotten more serious. Every menu has to have French, and sometimes it can only have in some cases, and I think that's actually gotten worse over time, not better.
Yes. So it made like eating for me a little frustrating because restaurants I went to had only things in French, and I had to use the Google Translate like picture thing a lot because I just didn't know what I was ordering.
Yeah, that's really excessive.
Yeah,
I have your texts from when you were there, and they're so good. I think this is worth reading for the podcast.
Okay,
you wrote, I'm in Canada. I missed quality because it took an hour to get to my seat, but I hate George. Also, bro, Montreal is so French. Like, the metro workers didn't speak English, lol. All the signs are in French without English underneath. It's wild, bro. The city smells like pastries. That last part just rules.
The city did smell like pastries. I'm not exaggerating.
It has a truly unsustainable number of bakeries.
But you know, that's really nice because I feel like in America we only get the chains. Like we have Starbucks and Tim Hortons, sure, because we're in Buffalo, but like there are so many other pastry shops there and coffee shops, which was nice. It was nice to get.
They're so divine too. They're all good.
Yeah, and I really like we're big drinks people, right? Like the three of us, and I really like the drinks that they had at the cafes. So I did get to experience a little bit of the culture. I was only there for like a day and a half, so I couldn't really go out and stuff. But I had poutine. I went to the cafes. I got some pastries. I did walk around downtown as well, so it was nice. And actually, I like the city. It's like a little mini like metropolis in France that's somehow transported into Canada. Yeah. I think it's a good place. If people can go visit there, I think they should.
Yeah, they've somehow managed to make North American city planning feel European. I think it may even be unique in that sense.
And the subway is actually organized too, which I thought was very helpful. Like you can
All
actually
of that
get
was for the
anywhere you need
Olympics,
to.
man. They built it
Oh,
for nothing, and they're still in debt because of it.
oh, really? Wow.
Even now.
Wow, I didn't know that. So yeah, I mean, I got to Montreal. Kept wanting to say France. I did not get to France. I got to Montreal. But I missed qualifying, and I grossly underestimated how long it would take me to get to my seat. And I got to the city 2 hours before quali started, and I
Mm-hmm.
thought 2 hours would be enough, but like my plan was to take there's like a bus that gets to the casino, and the casino is on the island where the track is. So I was like, great, it'll drop me off right at the front gates of the track, and then I'll walk to my seat from there. It's about a 20-minute walk, according to other people who have come before me. But then that bus was shut down this weekend, and I guess it usually isn't. So I was like right at St. Helens Island, which is like the island over from the circuit, and had no way of getting into
Mm.
the island itself. That's the circuit itself. So I took a cab, but then the cab drop off was like really inconvenient, like on purpose, because they don't want people taking too many cabs. So then I had to walk, and I literally walked for 2 hours and walked through
No.
qualifying and got to the circuit, not even to my seat, but just to the finally into the gates of the circuit right when George Russell was on pole. So it was just like the most walking I've ever had to do at a Grand Prix. I think I was kept texting Arafat every few minutes because he was giving me updates, and I was like, still walking, and I sent him pictures of myself in the woods because you need to like
Yeah.
get through the woods to get to your seat. And I don't know. So where did you sit when you were there, Adam? Do you remember like
Yeah,
what
so I was
grandstand?
there the year before, so we have a compare and contrast we can do, or compare and contrast, as Arafat would say.
Yeah,
And
This is what I was
yeah, for
sending
me,
Mohammed.
that was
yeah, that's
me.
right. That was him. I feel like every F1 driver worth his salt has a trudging through the forest walk
Yeah,
of
I
shame
didn't real like
picture.
it's all forest. It's like I don't know if anyone's ever been to like an island or like just like a hike or something, but it's as if you took like a hike and dropped a track in the middle of it. It's like it's all forest. So
Yeah,
Adam, where did you sit and how did
yeah.
you do you remember like getting onto your seat?
I don't remember if I remember what I was, grandstand C or something. I think.
Mm,
How could I already forget? That's such a shame. I think it was either turn 9 or 10, but it was the one
okay.
where George hit the wall last year.
Oh, amazing.
Fairly certain that's 9. Memory doesn't work like it used to. But what I would say is, I think things have gotten worse. So when I went, the cab drop off was only as good as the closest metro
Oh.
station to the track, but that was quite close. And then it was a really easy crossover to the track. The walk must have been 30 minutes at
Mm.
max. Like enough that I took my dad with me, who's
Yeah.
72 at the time. Easily made everything, but the trip back was a waking nightmare. So getting
Oh.
back, the just overwhelming crowds. The people were basically like blocking taxis' ways to force them to take them places for
Wow.
crazy marked up fares. Certainly, you couldn't hail an Uber.
Wow.
That was qualifying day, and then the race day, we were all herded towards a casino that was
Mm.
just had like the slowest shuttles
Mhm.
imaginable. It was really not a good scene.
So I
So
think what they did this year to fix that is make it harder to get like individual ride sharing like Uber taxi, because yeah, the taxi drop off was nowhere near the circuit. Like I had to walk
that's right.
so much just to get
Oh
to
yeah.
the metro station, and then I realized like I could have just taken the metro station like to where you're saying, because that's actually not, it's
Mm-hmm.
not very far once you get to the metro station. It's
Yeah.
like you said, maybe 30 minutes, but to get there was so long. But I think they increased the number of trains running in the metro station because the trains were like almost constant, which was very nice
Yeah.
for me. Once you got to the metro station, it got quite easy because there's so many trains coming So I think
Yeah.
that
The
was your
train is the
solution.
way to go, and if I had to advise anyone again, I'd say trains.
Yeah,
It made it better
definitely.
than say when I went to the Abu Dhabi GP, where that's not an option, and you're just beholden to taxis, and it's incredibly congested.
Oh my
So I
But
god.
remember when I went to the Spanish Grand Prix, I went on the train. Like everybody on the train was going to Spanish Grand Prix. You get off the train station. It's all very straightforward, very easy to do. And you're walking down these streets, and you're like, "Oh, I'm suddenly in like this small town."
Yeah.
And you're walking, and you're like, "I don't know where I'm going, but there's like thousands of people all walking this way. I'm going to follow
Yeah.
them."
yeah.
Yeah.
But then I just remember at one point, I came up like next to a cafe, and I hadn't had lunch. And I was like, I might just sit here and have some pizza. So I sat, had pizza, had a drink and stuff, and then I carried on because there was just like a river of people constantly going.
Yeah.
So I knew where I was
That's
going and
beautiful.
what was going on.
It's one of the nice things about attending a Grand Prix is you're surrounded by thousands of people that love the same thing you do, and you don't always get that experience. It's like a Formula One conference. That's the closest
You
thing
say
I can.
that. You say that. I was surrounded by like-minded people the race day. In fact, I somehow was surrounded by like a crew of S2000 owners. So
Yeah.
that was pretty nice. But for qualifying, my row was entirely dudes who just bought tickets because they were on a bachelor party and didn't know any of the teams and were incredibly rowdy, throwing
That's
their
a little
Heinekens
frustrating.
everywhere. It's
Yeah.
not the end of the world. I mean, luckily it wasn't race day, but you're not
Yeah.
guaranteed.
Well,
Not
did
in the
you
grandstands anyway.
Did you find the atmosphere pretty cordial, like between the different teams? Yeah, me too.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
There was nothing. There are always Checo hooligans, but even so.
Well, so I didn't get the
Enough
Checo
respect
hooligan
to
because
them,
I've been
too.
to Texas, and in Texas they're everywhere because it's like,
Oh yeah, sure. Okay.
you know, it's like his home race part 2. But
Yeah,
I
fair.
didn't see any hooligans at all. You know, here in Canada, it was like everyone was like, it really didn't matter. You know, the color of your
Because
shirt.
it was too hard to get in. They were all outside.
Yeah, it's funny. We do have. No, there is that. I think our manners really are as good as people say they are, and I would even say the bachelor party guys were, I think, from Vermont.
Oh, so they're like even
Yeah.
more of imposters.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there's plausible deniability there for sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that our difference in experiences in terms of organization and transport is probably accurate because you probably have seen already, but Martin Brundle went off and said it was the worst experience he's ever had at a Grand Prix.
Oh, really? I actually didn't see that. Why
So
did he say
there's
that?
loads of rumblings about it was really terrible. The infrastructure's all falling apart. The commentary boxes, there was loads of water leaking in, and the TV crews were all like trying to save equipment from being damaged. A lot of people, even though they bought tickets, couldn't get in because the infrastructure was so poor. And then there was that whole thing of they just suddenly at one point put black screens up on the start-finish line so general admission people couldn't watch.
Oh, that's lame.
There's rumors now that they've started talking to Toronto about having a Grand Prix there.
Toronto is not ready. Toronto is not ready, bro.
I suspect they're doing that not with the intention of actually having a Toronto Grand Prix, but of
putting pressure,
trying to putting pressure on the local government around Montreal to invest in the circuit and update and modernize.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get too political, but that would mean, if you understand how our system works, that Ontario tax-paying money is probably going to fix the Montreal Grand Prix, and that will be slightly infuriating.
That's funny.
Because it goes central and it goes to the have-not provinces. So basically, Ontario and Alberta subsidize the rest of the country.
Oh, really? You guys do that? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, that would never fly in America. There would be another civil war.
It would not fly in America.
That would be another civil war.
That's don't step on snake territory.
Yeah, literally.
No step on snake.
I was gonna say that, like, from a fan's perspective, I think the hardest thing to do was to get into the race. It was very hard to do that. But once you did, the one thing they did better than Texas in my like limited experience is that they just had like food and water places everywhere. Whereas in Texas, there's like dedicated food and water islands that you need to get to if you want food and water. But like over here, there was like food everywhere, water everywhere, which made things very
convenient. And the food
convenient.
trucks are affordable and delicious.
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought everything was very affordable too. The one thing I would say is I felt bad for the general admission people because you could already tell that security was being very extra just the whole time you were there, like checking your ticket multiple times. Like once you're in the track, like you've shown your ticket like 4 times. There's no reason to just show it another 2. There's no way you snuck in at that point, you know? But like always showing your ticket, and the general admission people had like
I've seen videos on TikTok of people sneaking in through the woods.
How? It's an island. You can't get to it. I don't think that's true. I would have snuck in if that was possible. I was desperate to watch qualifying.
Man. You're probably underestimating Quebexico. I think our security is pretty bad.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. That has that nickname for a reason.
Okay, maybe that's true then. But I lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so there's some really nice areas that where you could get really close to the track for people who are in general admission, but there were very few of those spots. And in the past couple of years, Formula One has been pushing the general admission ticket so much because it's cheap and people can buy it. But the spot, I don't think any of the races really can support that. Even in Texas, when I had a general admission ticket, I had to get there so early to get a spot. So to finally get a spot and then have them put up the black things, I would be very frustrated.
Right.
And I definitely think, I know, Arafat, when you went in the general admission, you had a very good experience because you got to go from part of the race to part of the race to part of the race. I don't think that's like a feasible option anymore. I think you would spend the entire race just walking if you try to do that. And I think they've made, in many ways, viewing general admission harder. I don't know, Adam, have
That's
you ever
too bad.
done general admission, or you typically buy a seat?
No, and I think I'm past that age. I think general
Yeah.
admission's better for standing in your 20s, like going to a concert. I'm
Yeah.
past that.
I think it depends what circuit you're at. So I did general admission for Singapore.
Yeah.
And if you look, because I looked on the map before I went, and there were some stands where general admission people could go sit down. And a lot of them were pretty empty, right?
Wow.
Okay.
Around the back and stuff like that. And I think Singapore, because it's a city track, it's small.
Mm-hmm.
You always feel like you're right up close next to the circuit. You can watch stuff as you're walking along.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it worked out. I did it at didn't really do it, but no, because we got seats actually. Sorry, Silverstone. I got seats at Cops, but I think general admission there would have been a nightmare because it would have been so packed and so busy and so muddy and whatever else. But I think general admission at Silverstone would have been really, really difficult. So I think it's very circuit dependent. And
For
I don't
sure.
know, maybe the city ones, my whole experience, N equals 1 of Singapore.
Yeah, also like
I think that's
Singapore is
towards
utopian. It's not even fair. It's basically like a Scandinavian Grand Prix. They just like actually care about you and want you to be able to sit down and are prepared.
It's
for
wild in Singapore.
the
Like you
elderly
go
and
to like
infirm to
cross a
enjoy
road.
things.
You go to cross a road and you'll be like, right, I'm going to go down these stairs, go under the road and pop up on the stairs on the other side. And you're just like, right, here's a dingy little tunnel. I'll go into that. You go into that tunnel and it's got like 6 floors of shops and cafes and all these things. You're like, I didn't realize there was a mall in this basement under this road. And like, I just remember stopping again to get pizza. Maybe this is the theme of my life. I wanted to just cross the road at Singapore, and I suddenly found myself in an underground mall. And so I got like some pizza, and then I carried on. But yeah, I was really amazed by it.
I think you're right, because I remember with Vegas, people were saying that the general admission was really worth it. There were so many areas you could watch the race from, and security couldn't cover it fast enough, or whatever coverage they put, people would tear it down. So it was almost like there was no point in getting race tickets in Vegas because it was so easy to find like a bridge or a walkway that you could watch the race from. So I think you're right. I think if it's a large, like sprawling track, get a seat. But if it's like a condensed city track where you're able to access different angles, it's worth it to do general admission, is the takeaway I would have. But I also got to experience a change in weather. So Texas is very hot. It's always more than like 90 degrees. I don't know what that is in other metrics, 35, maybe 30. I don't know. It's always like, it's 4. No, we use our special number, 95.
Oh, right.
Nobody else uses.
I've had a look. It's 32.2222222.
Yeah. So
wow, that's fast. It's also less than I thought.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it would be like 35, 40, but it is usually typically above that number, 32. So if you're from a country that makes sense, I want you to go, oh, that's hot. The sun is out and there's no shade anywhere. I was sitting in the shaded main grandstands, but the shade only covers the VIP section. So even in the shaded stands, I was hot. But over here in Canada, it was really, really, it was like rainy, which is, I remember, Adam, you told me, and like, oh, it's so nice to sit and watch and think about like, oh, it's going to be such a fun race that's wet to dry. But when you're sitting there, you're actually miserable. That's so true. Arfa, how many times did I text you during that race? I'm wet. I'm uncomfortable. I don't want to be wet anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of how I felt in Canada too. I was like, my gosh, like this is a champions race. It's a top 3 circuit. We've got Max followed by Lewis, followed by Alonso. The two are changing. Like, it's everything you could possibly want, but I'm a little too cold and damp to love it as much as I should. So I want I love rain races, but I don't want to be there for them.
Yes.
And
Yeah, it's one of my
Yes.
big
if
fears
someday
about
I
going
get
to
to go to
Silverstone.
Spa, I pray it's not one of the rainy spas.
Yeah.
Yes. If the second half of the race hadn't dried up, like if it had stayed as rainy as the beginning was, I would have been miserable the whole time. I'm very happy that it stopped raining around the safety car period or whenever it was that it stopped raining, because that actually allowed me to like think and enjoy the race. Like I was like, it was like you're sitting in a shower for 2 hours is what it was like for me. Like everything just dripping wet. Even the
That
people in
sucks.
the ponchos don't mean anything. That it's like a Tupperware bottle in the ocean. It was like nothing. But yeah, it was certainly two different experiences. But what was it like, Arafat, sitting at home and hearing about the rain and the wet to dry and the wet to dry to wet and all the other stuff?
Yeah, I had a great time watching the race. I really, really enjoyed it. Obviously, I
Yeah.
would have wanted the end result to be
Yeah.
different, but I had a lot of fun.
Hmm.
I was half expecting, for you to be like our mole on the ground and to be like, guys, it's raining, and then like a minute later, the TV would be like, oh no, it's raining. But actually, the TV was telling me stuff before you were.
For
So
the weather.
yeah,
Oh yeah, that's right. I sent so many messages when I met at Grand Prix, and all the time.
Actually, I was like hearing it from the commentary too, because I remember at one point they said it's gonna rain in 2 laps, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get wet in 2 laps." So I think I was
Oh no!
yeah, I
relying
remember you
on them
sending
more
that.
than.
So you treated
So
it like you're like on an amusement park ride.
yeah.
So watch out, the wet part's coming. You're like, why did I do this?
I
And
should
then
have
it was
sat at
funny.
the back.
I like halfway through, I think Laura Winter or somebody, I forgot who we had locally. I think we heard her locally. But anyway,
Yeah, I
they were
bet you
like,
did.
"Oh, it's
Or
only
Rosanna.
raining outside the track. It's not raining in the track." And I was like, "Oh, that's great." So as soon as I leave to get to my car, it's gonna be raining again. And it was. From the moment I left the track and started walking back the 2 hours to the metro station to then go to my car, it was like raining the whole time. I was wet until I got home that night. My feet were like my socks just never properly dried, so my feet were
Oh,
wet
that's
for
the
hours.
worst.
I
Wet
know.
socks is one of the worst things in life.
Oh, you need
In
waterproof socks.
privileged life,
Why
at
don't you have
least.
waterproof socks?
What?
I do. I have waterproof socks for hiking in times like this. However, the day before I went to work with those on and I stepped in a puddle and they got like it was overwhelmed. They couldn't handle it. So I put them in the wash and then they weren't like dried and ready for me
You
by
have
the
to
time I
dry
had to
them
leave.
one way and then dry them the other way because the waterproof situation.
Yeah, so it's very frustrating and
That's funny.
I had to wear normal cotton socks that have never been the same. They're traumatized from this Grand Prix. Yeah, but that was
What a
nice
Grand Prix,
experience.
though, guys.
I know
This
to
is the
watch. Oh my
easily the
god,
best, at least
of the year.
since early 2022, when
it was very good.
Ferrari and
And,
Red
and
Bull
I,
were
I
chopping
don't
and
think you
changing.
could literally tell who was going to win. Like Max won, but at
Mm,
no point was that guaranteed. I think.
no, this was inverse
Yeah.
Miami. He had very little right to win that.
All right. I think that is it for us and everything we had to discuss. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Adam, for joining us today. I'm glad we got to compare and contrast our experiences, but it was basically compare. They were very similar with the wet and the traffic and everything. So, but yeah, it was overall a good weekend, and I think a really, really incredible race. And reminds me, I'm glad we got this. I could feel alive again when it comes to F1. But thank you, everyone. We will see you after the Spanish Grand Prix in a couple weeks. Bye.
Beautiful.
Bye.
Bye.